This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com.
My colleagues, finally, May 20th, our first budget bill since the debt service bill. What do we know? What don't we know? Well, we know we're looking at a budget bill of nearly $270 billion, give or take. More than $250 billion. My colleagues, that's a lot of zeros.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a WCNY podcast about power and politics in New York. And in this episode, we're exploring how an Erie County Democrat, County Executive Mark Poloncarz, is trying to grow his sphere of influence outside of Western New York, making visits to states around the country, working on a book about his government experience, and launching a political action committee to support Democratic candidates in local races all over the country. The campaign raises a lot of questions like why, and for anyone outside of Erie County, who is Mark Poloncarz? To answer some of those questions, we're joined by County Executive Poloncarz. Well, we'll get into what you're doing, but the some of it invokes the experience of Mayor Pete when he was running for DNC chair, and I'm curious whether that is the type of comparison you want to invoke because he has been successful in giving himself a national profile, or whether that's something you want to maybe avoid given how he might be one of one as a political figure, given his experience as a veteran and how worldly he is and how well-spoken he is. I mean, do you see similarities there? And if so, what are they?
The one thing that Mayor Pete, as the mayor of South Bend, was able to do is to say that you just don't have to be a governor or a congressman to be a leader. And as is often the case, some of the representatives at the county level represent areas that are bigger than a number of states. I mean, Erie County alone is larger in population than 5 states. It's about the same size as geographically as the state of Rhode Island. And so what the mayor did is he kind of opened up a different thought among some in the party where it was always like, well, we need to hear from governors. We need to hear from our congressmen and senators. But the ones that are actually delivering the services, the boots on the ground, are the local leaders. So it opened up some people's eyes that, yeah, we can have leadership and people who are voices in our party that are just not coming from Washington or from the state capitals. There's no way we're going to be able to rebuild the Democratic Party from the top down. The only way to do it is from the ground up. Now, I will very soon in July become the chair of the National Democratic County Officials. I'm the first vice chair right now. I've been in line with second vice chair a couple of years ago. And I will represent not only the DNC, but be the voice of county officials for the Democratic Party nationwide. So there's 3,069 counties in the United States. There's about 2,500 of them that have constituted Democratic county committees. And I'll be the representative of those elected officials as well as the constituted county committees at the DNC. So I think I have a voice to express what's happening at the local level. As we like to say at the National Democratic County Officials, we're taking back our country one county at a time. And that's what we've done in previous elections. In this past year is we've been able to flip legislatures, flip red county executive seats to blue, including one just recently in Wisconsin that not only the National Democratic County officials helped out, but my new political action committee, Boosting Future Leaders Onward. You have to have Democratic candidates running at the local level, at the county level. They can win at the local and county level. The problem is they've had no support from the national party in the last 30 years. It's all been focused on the big ticket races. And as we're finding out, especially when demographics change and the Northeast and even the West are going to lose congressional seats in the next when I talk about the next reapportionment after 2030, they're going to lose it to South Carolina. They're going to lose it to Tennessee. They're going to lose it to Georgia. And if we do not have a strong Democratic Party and candidates running at that level, we're going to lose in those states. So the idea behind not only what I'm doing with the National Democratic County officials, but boosting future leaders onward is to build that bench, to build that base, so that the Democrats can actually perform and win in areas where they've been ignored for a long time because there really has been no operations.
Well, then let's talk about the PAC, boosting future leaders onward. And at least initially, there was this idea of getting involved in what you saw as potential pickup opportunities in southern states such as Alabama and South Carolina. You mentioned Wisconsin already. There were other parts of the state like Tennessee. I think battleground areas like Georgia and New Hampshire were on your mind. When you think about your role, though, are you looking as a potential recruitment vehicle? Are you trying to identify who the potential quote-unquote blue dogs might be for those type of areas? Or are you just looking to support the candidates that have emerged or are already out there?
Well, it's going to be difficult for my organization to be able to be the one that is doing the candidate recruitment. What we're planning on doing and what we've already done is to work with the county committees as well as their candidates that they've identified. I'll give you an example of that. It's a winner. We supported Eric Olson, who ran for county executive in Portage County, Wisconsin. And they actually have their local general election in April. It's strange in New York, but their local general elections for county races were in April. And 4 years ago, Eric ran and lost in a 50-50 district by only 24 votes. This year, he won by a huge margin of victory with 60% of the vote. And we were able to financially help him and give him direction along the way. We're going to get a good example of it in August in Tennessee, because Tennessee has its local elections in August, their general elections. My political action committee, Boosting Future Leaders Onward, is supporting candidates in Wilson County, Tennessee.
What does that support look like? Is it money? Is it expertise? What are you guys providing?
It's both.
And how much money and to how many candidates?
Advice on get out the vote. What you got to understand, David, is that in these races, we're not talking about huge amounts of money.
Sure. Yeah, I've seen you talk about the influence of $20,000, $30,000 makes a big deal. So is that what we're talking about in these races like in Tennessee?
Well, it could be combined. I mean, each race is not going to need $20,000. Some of these races don't spend more than $5,000 total in each race. So if you had a combined $20,000 between the candidates as well as their county committee, that's a huge amount of money. That makes a difference, where if you're running in New York City or you're running in Buffalo, $20,000 is nice, but it's not going to make a difference in a race. Wilson County is going to be a good example because they have a 25-person county commission, which is comparable to a county legislature in New York. It is 100% Republican because 4 years ago when they had their elections, no one ran. They've been able to develop an operation, develop candidates, and now they're running in every race. And I feel confident that they are going to flip quite a number of seats. And part of it is because of the work that we're doing to assist them, because it is technical advice just as much as it is money. You could have all the money in the world, but if you don't know where to put it and how to utilize it best, it's not going to help you all that much. And you see that often when you have these billionaires and multimillionaires run, they put a lot of money in the race, but they waste their money and then they end up losing badly. So you don't need
those are usually much bigger scale elections, though. I mean, millionaires and billionaires aren't typically running for a county seat.
That's true. I will submit that. However, just money doesn't necessarily buy you victory. Sure. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So what I look at it is we're going to have a good idea of the potential of what I'm doing in August. And then we have candidates that are reaching out from all across the country. We've had candidates not only from New York, but Texas, Georgia, Kansas, Missouri, Arizona that are reaching out for assistance. And we're vetting the candidates. It's not like we're approving every single candidate that applies for an endorsement because we want to vet the candidates. Are they a real candidate? Do they support the democratic values that I do? And then we're going to make decisions on where we're going to put our money based on where we think we could have the greatest impact. So it's an attempt to do something that truthfully not anyone that I'm aware of has done it, at least on the county and local level to this degree. It's not to say that there haven't been issue organizations that have supported county candidates and things like that. That's true, but not at this type of issue, which is to really build the bench. And whether it's the trips I'm taking, like a recent one in Alabama or South Carolina or New Hampshire, what I'm often hearing from the county leaders and the candidates themselves is no one has ever done this or reached out to us from the national party before. I am a member of the DNC now. I will have a voice that I do not necessarily have when I become chair of NDCO in July. But it's just refreshing to hear from these folks that we're just happy that someone's taking an interest in our races where they never did before, and that interest can make a difference in whether we win or lose.
Well, lastly, on the money front, it's my understanding that when you initially got this initiative up off the ground, the goal was to raise 7 figures. As we talk, I think 5 or 6 months into this, how much money have you raised, and where is it coming from?
Well, we haven't raised 7 figures, but we have raised 6.
Okay. Does that mean 100,000 or 999,000?
Well, we have not raised 999,000. We've raised more than 100,000. If everything goes well by the end of this year, we should have $250,000, which would be easily sufficient to help us for what we are doing this year, and probably give us a good amount for next year. So not a lot of money can go a long way. But we've had some success in fundraising, and I think one of the things that others are looking at is to see, can this actually make a difference? And if it does, I believe it'll help us raise even more money in the long run, especially in areas like New York City, where we're planning on doing some fundraising later this year, where they're not used to having to focus on county races because, of course, the boroughs are all part of New York City. But if you're going to flip seats in these key states, you need to do it at the county level. And another reason why it's big for 2028 is the counties count the votes, and it's county recorders and county clerks in Arizona and in Tennessee and in Georgia who will actually count the votes and certify the votes before they're sent to the state house. And those are elected positions in those states. So you want to make certain that you have fair and free elections. You got to have people who believe in fair and free elections in those offices, and those are often people who are elected at the county level.
So you are also in the process, as my understanding, of writing a second book, and you mentioned those visits to South Carolina and New Hampshire, and those two things usually add up to a precursor for a presidential run. So at this point, are you prepared to say that you're not running for president in 2028, or you are running for president in 2028?
Well, I don't have any particular plans at this point. The book is just about finished. It's called Campaigning is Hard, Governing is Harder, and it's anecdotes about what I learned on the campaign trail as well as governing in county government and all the people that I've dealt with, including issues going back to dealing with Governor Andrew Cuomo and negotiating leases for the Buffalo Bills and things like that. I think I have a voice that matters. I'm being invited all across the country to speak on behalf of BFLO and NDCO, and people are responding positively to the message because we cannot ignore areas just because we say that they're flyover country. We're doing that as a Democratic Party to our own detriment. And if we can build up strong parties in those areas, it's going to benefit us in the long run. And that's what I want to play a role in.
You've been quoted as saying that you are looking forward to supporting strong local leaders who are focused on the issues that matter to all. And that is reminiscent of some of the post-mortem in recent years when Democrats have gotten their clocks cleaned at the national level and they've been accused of not focusing on the issues that people care about. To me, though, that kind of sounds like code for avoid those controversial issues, avoid those issues that Democrats typically fight for, but maybe aren't that popular in terms of broad support. So what does that mean to focus on the issues that matter to all? Because there are also undocumented immigrants or trans people. So, I mean, does it mean just don't talk about their concerns?
No, but I think what we need to focus on is, as Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. Mm-hmm. When it comes to local elections and county elections, it often is the local issues that drive them. The one thing about the Democratic Party, which I laugh about, is the one big tent. Not everybody agrees. And as James Carville said, when the Democratic Party forms firing squads, they form them in circles. Sure. And sometimes we're our own worst enemy. But the main issue that I'm hearing about, whether it was down in Alabama whether it was in Tennessee or here in Erie County, New York, is the economy and inflation. And it can't just be about anti-Donald Trump. And there's a lot of folks in the Democratic Party who are like, oh, we're going to win because of Trump. I go, well, no, that's an issue, but we have to give an alternative. We can't be the ones just to say we're not Donald Trump. You have to be able to show why you're a stronger candidate and have a stronger platform. And it's the Democratic Party that's fighting for the men and women of this country, especially working families.
Can you elaborate on what that means? Because we've heard those sort of talking points a lot from Democrats. James Skoufis, when he looked to launch his national profile with a DNC bid. But we talk about county issues. In Nassau County, the county executive there, Republican, has highlighted trans issues. He's made girls' sports a big issue. So how would you advise like a Democrat who's running in a purple district where maybe a Republican wants to make that a big issue? Do they just ignore it? Do they just not take questions about it? Do they say, yes, I agree with the Republican person here? Do they say, no, I stand with our trans allies here? I mean, how do you navigate all that stuff?
Well, I think the number one thing is you have to address the issue, but you also have to remember what are the people focused on in your community.
Sure. But if one guy is shining his spotlight on that issue and you choose to ignore it, I mean, they're going to say, well, I guess that candidate it must be for it then, and they just don't want to talk about it.
Well, I'll give you an example in Erie County in Cheektowaga, where a few years ago the Republicans focused on immigration to their benefit, and they flipped the Cheektowaga Town Council. And then 2 years later, it flipped back. Democrats won every seat last year. And it primarily was because the Republicans who were in control of the Cheektowaga Town Council did nothing. They didn't even move forward on road projects.
You don't think it was because of the national mood and the national environment?
No, actually, in Cheektowaga, it was because they failed to actually govern. So for any candidate, they've got to talk about the issues and they've got to understand what matters in their community. But the thing that matters right now that I'm hearing across the country is issues associated with the economy and inflation.
What is the Democratic talking points on the economy? What would you be advising someone to say in their 30-second ad or a 60-second elevator pitch? What is the smart Buttigieg line, so to speak?
Well, we're just fighting for the working men and women of this country. We're working to ensure that they have health care. We're ensuring we would immediately get rid of a lot of these tariffs, which are actually the war in Iran, which of course is having a huge impact on prices. It's also tariffs. There's no one answer in any of these races. Every race is going to be dictated by the issues locally. Most recessions in the United States have all started under Republican leadership, either in the presidency. Traveling across the country, I'm going to places where not a lot of the folks in Washington or New York City are going. For too long, Republicans have defined the people in the Democratic Party. But when I go out there, I remind everybody, I'm from the party of FDR, the ones that are fighting for health care. And when people lose their health care, they realize the impact that has on their lives. So my friends in the Working Families Party and I have basically come to the conclusion when I run that we're not going to agree on 100% of the platform. There are issues that will get people upset. And the Republicans find a way often to drive those as wedge issues. We can make a difference if people are focused on those things and not just the wedge issues. I think we're going to win in areas where we haven't won before because we've proven it over the last few months as Democratic candidates are flipping races all across the United States, and the Republicans have not flipped a single seat in a special election or any of the general elections at the local level, which have been held in the last few months.
So one, that was more than 60 seconds. And two, you've been talking about getting involved in local races and local issues, but everything you were talking about there was nationalization, really, of politics. I mean, you're talking about tariffs. I mean, are you having people who are running for county seats make promises about tariff policy, or are you having them talk about the Affordable Care Act?
It's not that they can change it. I think people need to understand why prices are going up.
Sure. So then it sounds like you're leaning into the nationalization of politics right now, which seems kind of just like riding the national wave, which you said wasn't necessarily the case in like Cheektowaga, though.
No, but every race is different.
Okay.
But if somebody says, "Hey, prices are going up," it's like, well, I can't change everything going on, but here's the why they're going up.
Okay.
I think people need to understand that. At the local elections, it's often an issue with regards to what's happening in their locality. But you have to be able to get your message out, and that's one of the things that we're doing, and understanding that you could be the greatest candidate in the world, but if you don't have the resources to get your message out, whether it's in mail or radio ads, most of these ads are not going to require television ads. In a lot of these markets, it just doesn't make sense. That a little money can go a long way, but you got to stand for something. And so you have to be able to go out there and say why you're a proud Democrat, and a lot of that has to do with national issues. But also, here's the things I want to do locally that are going to make a difference and improve your life.
Gotcha. So you're a guy who's perceived as being a moderate. I think that's probably a fair assessment in terms of the Democratic Party. And you're working in these areas where I imagine you view the more moderate candidates or moderate Democrats as having a better chance in a purple or even a red district. At the same time, in some of these local districts that are bluer, we're seeing, you mentioned the Working Families Party, DSA is seeing those as opportunities to run even more liberal candidates and potentially knock out more moderate or even conservative Democrats. Are you concerned about that trend on the local level?
No. Okay. I mean, for myself, I consider myself fairly progressive.
Okay.
My critics on social media call me a communist.
People say a lot of stuff on social media.
Yeah, never. My friends that are in DSA, and I have friends, we don't agree on everything, but I think they understand that we agree on a lot. And I don't see a problem with people running. The issue is if you're running in Erie County, New York, and you're a DSA candidate, you may be able to win a seat here or there. If you're running as a DSA candidate in Tennessee, in Wilson County, or Pickens County, South Carolina, where we visited, you're probably not going to win. But maybe you could if you talk about the issues that matter and say, listen, I believe in the Bernie Sanders type of way. However, I understand as a local candidate, these are the issues that matter. So I don't look at it as a bad thing.
I mean, are you concerned though in those localities around the country where there are deep blue districts, deep blue municipalities, and where the race really is in the primary, like in New York City, that the DSA or that WFP is really looking to assert its authority by running far left candidates in those districts and potentially knocking out more moderate Democrats, and then that's sort of moving the whole direction of the party to a certain degree?
Well, that's moving the party for that district. It isn't moving the party for the whole party.
Mamdani has become a national leader by winning a New York City primary.
Correct, but Zoran Mamdani couldn't get elected in a lot of places across the United States.
Right, but what I'm saying is if they're going to win in these blue districts, are you concerned at all that they're going to become the standard bearers of the party instead of the maybe more moderate and more broadly electable people?
No, I think the party's still going to be. I mean, they used to call the GOP the Big Ten party. They're not a Big Ten party. The Democratic Party is always going to be a Big Ten party.
Okay.
It's going to have differences of opinion. When I attend the Democratic National Committee meetings, the Resolutions Committee is always one of the largest and attended because the resolutions that'll be submitted are not going to be always agreed upon by everyone. But I think that's fine. That's democracy. That's the basis of politics. As you sit here and you discuss what your issues are. If we ran DSA candidates on the Democratic line in many of these regions, we would not win a single seat.
And that's common sense.
I'm not advocating for very conservative Democrats either. I think people should stand up for their ideals. However, just because they're successful in one region doesn't mean you're going to be successful in another. I'm in Erie County. It's a purple county. There's been 8 county executives. I'm only the second Democrat.
Sure.
And I think that shocks people because when they think of Buffalo, they think, hey, it's a Democratic area. And yeah, Buffalo is. But the suburbs are purple, and then my rural areas are deep red. And so when you're running in a countywide election, especially, maybe in a city, but in a countywide, you have to understand that you're running in the equivalent of a small state. You're representing a lot of different people. And what I think is important for a lot of my Democratic friends, and I've told them, is that what works in New York City, or for that matter, Buffalo, is not necessarily going to work elsewhere. That's why it's key that you focus on good candidates that have a strong message, that are supporting the Democratic Party message, but also are focusing on the issues that really matter at their level. And in each community could be different. Right now, a big thing that's going on across the United States and Democratic Party candidates are fighting against is the proliferation of data centers and tax breaks for them. I think in some parts of the country, they're very welcome. In others, they're not. So if people are angry about data centers in your region and you are against data centers, then you should be focusing on data centers, not on something else that may be hot and heavy in Los Angeles or New York City.
So in purple counties, municipalities, would you recommend Democrats sort of lean into those swing voters, those people who identify as moderates, and try to appeal to them? Or do you think they should be more focused on driving out their base and maybe tapping into a lack of Democratic enthusiasm that might have existed in the past in some of those areas?
Well, one of the problems that we're realizing as I tour the country and I talk to county chairs is they just haven't had the resources to even identify the voters that they believe should be voting for them and then getting them out. The Democratic Party offers the van, so to speak, which is available to states. And then sometimes states pass them down to their county committees and other times they haven't. And if you don't have access to the voter rolls and knowing who's voting in elections, that matters. Another thing that's big in a lot of these other states is they do not allow party identification. People can just vote. They don't have to be identified with any particular party. So it's tough sometimes to glean to who would be your Democratic supporters or those that are going to respond to your message. So one of the things that we're talking about on technical issues is we're trying to help, at least through the National Democratic County officials, we're trying to help counties that don't have the resources identify who the voters are that are more likely to support their message, and then use the tools that we know that work for GOTV of getting the vote out. It may sound crazy for people in Albany or New York City to say, what do you mean they don't have those tools? But in a large portion of the United States, they do not have those tools at the Democratic county level or the individuals that can analyze that data and provide them the information that they need so they can get the vote out. That's one of the things that NDCO is doing. That's some of the stuff that BFLO can do that a lot of these county committees do not have the ability to do. So yes, identifying voters is huge, but if you don't know how to do it and you don't have the resources to do it, it's almost impossible to do it. It's one of the things that we're doing and trying to help them so that these counties can actually not just run good candidates, but also use the methods that we know are successful to help them in their districts where maybe they couldn't have done it before. And this is an example. There's a lot of people think all this money that the DNC raises goes to states and local governments. That's not the case, or not governments, but local parties.
Yeah, there's a lot of consultants that got to get paid before that money trickles down.
There are consultants that are paid, but the DNC does give $5,000 a month to every state committee, and then gives another $5,000 a month to other state committees that have red leadership, so to speak, in those states. So that's a decent amount of money, but that money often doesn't go down to the local level. And so for some of these county committees, their entire budget may be $20,000 for a whole year. So they don't have paid staff, they don't have operations, they don't have headquarters, but they have hardworking volunteers. So our goal is to get them some more money so that they can do what's necessary to be successful, but also help teach them how to utilize the resources that do exist so that they can be successful in the future. This is all a result of the national party ignoring what's going on at the local level. For decades, the Republicans have focused on winning elections at the local level and helping local committees succeed. The National Democratic Party didn't do that. The new chair, Ken Martin, is focused on that, and I give him a lot of credit for doing it. Because there's a lot of folks in the party who want to fight him on this and think that every penny should go only to congressional and Senate races. But we're never going to be able to take back our country and win in these states that we need to if we're ignoring it for decades on end. And that's one of the things that I'm focused on, as well as the work that I do with NDCO.
Well, I've got 30 seconds before I got to go, and sticking with an Albany question, the Assembly Speaker has said that he doesn't feel beholden to the recent tradition when it comes to appointing majority leaders and sticking with someone from upstate. And I wonder whether you think that is a good philosophy or a mistake, and whether there should be that regional balance when it comes to having a downstate speaker and an upstate majority leader, especially since our current majority leader in the Assembly comes from Buffalo.
Well, I think Speaker Heastie would benefit from having a voice from upstate, certainly would love to have it be Buffalo again, as we've had in the past with not only Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, but Paul Tokaz before.
Sure.
I think he needs to have that voice. If you're just listening to the voices of the people in the bubble in New York City, you're missing out on what's happening in the rest of the state, which is different than New York City. So I would implore the speaker to appoint a majority leader who comes from outside of the New York City sphere. I certainly would hope it's from Buffalo. If not, it certainly should be from someone that's a few hundred miles outside of New York.
Well, we've been speaking with County Executive Mark Poloncarz. He is the founder of the Boosting Future Leaders Onward PAC. Mark, thanks so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, David.
$250 billion worth of zeros. Like I said, a lot of zeros.